From the coverage that TBJ has been seeing in recent months, perhaps the last year or two, how are Triangle businesses faring in this economy now?
Well, there's a lot of good news here. The first thing is obviously we're growing and that we're booming, and you see that in the stories that we do. One of the things that that I see a lot is sometimes it's like the stories were almost, I hate to say too positive. I don't mean it like you can be too positive, but I mean you see the stories are all somebody's growing, somebody's adding jobs, somebody's adding revenue, somebody's bringing in investors, stuff like that, and that's a sign of a really healthy economy. There are some concerns there and some things we're looking at, in particular the labor force. When you talk to, say, people on the commercial real estate side, one of the things they're really having trouble with is just getting people to build the stuff. So they're actually, the demand for houses, for example, is almost outstripping their ability to build houses because they're having a hard time finding workers to go out and do that. And even if they do find workers, then what happens is you pay your workers $13 an hour, but the guy down the street is going to go, well, I'll pay them $15 an hour. So you're expecting guys to be on the job on Monday morning. Well, they've moved on to something else. So there's some challenges for that economy for sure, but the overall picture here is really positive, which is a good thing.
We are chatting with Dane Huffman. He is managing editor for the Triangle Business Journal. And another issue that you would have an interesting insight on is what are some of the big topics and issues that business leaders are discussing? What are the things that are on their minds that people who aren't among that business leader class might not be thinking about?
Well, and I do think people are thinking about this dynamic growth of the downtowns in the area, and what that means is you're really seeing this. Not far from here, as you know, the warehouse district has just exploded. It's changing Raleigh's skyline. All these businesses coming on. The price of real estate in this area is skyrocketing. You're seeing $30 a square foot in the downtowns now is regular rent, and that's changing things. We've started to talk about what about the mom and pop stores who've been in downtown Raleigh, downtown Durham for years and years and years. How's this going to impact their rent? So what we try to do is look at what's happening on the economic side and then go take a look at what does that mean downstream for people and how does that impact others. But there's absolutely a phenomenal growth across. And I think also everybody's talking about traffic. We know that there are traffic issues and everything, and we got some problems here, and that's not going to go away.
Let's talk about a couple of issues that are big for the economy and for business and how they might affect what's going on with the people and businesses that you cover. First is major federal tax reform, big change in the corporate tax rate. What are you hearing about that?
Well, there's certainly, what we're hearing is the accountants are going, oh my gosh, what does this mean? That's the most interesting thing is they've suddenly completely scrambled to see about this. But you're certainly starting to see corporate earnings come in really strong so far. On the local side, you'll start to see more of that going forward. We're sort of in earnings season right now, but I expect that to be highly positive. The one thing I would say about that, Mitch, that one of the things I've learned in my time at TBJ is I had a long conversation with a man named Shane Stevens, and he's the Irish Council. He's out of southeastern United States, covers Southeast. He's in Atlanta. And he was talking about trying to develop North Carolina, get North Carolina businesses to invest in Ireland and get Irish companies over here, stuff like that. But he was talking about the growth in Ireland. And a point he made about what's driving that is their corporate tax rate is 12.5%. 12.5%. So regardless of your politics, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or regardless of how you think people should be taxed, if Ireland is competing against American companies and they're taxing their companies at 12.5%, that has implications in a global economy. And one of the things I learned is that this competition is not necessarily with South Carolina and Virginia, which we all know, but when you hear somebody talk about it, you're like, wow, that's really significant. And it is. So to me, with tax reform and some of the changes in tax reform, regardless, again, of what side of the aisle you're on, you have to be aware that these companies that we need to stay in North Carolina, that we need to stay in the United States, they're competing on a global market, and that's significant.
One other big topic that's under discussion, because the Triangle is one of the places that might get this. We're one of the 20 that are up for potentially to get this Amazon HQ2, the second headquarters. What are you hearing from folks about how that might impact us if we ended up winning that?
Well, it certainly have a huge impact. You're talking about Amazon needs 500,000 square feet of commercial real estate space in the first year. That's basically the Wells Fargo Tower in downtown Raleigh. So they would need something that massive right away. 100 acres also ready to go. So where would you put that possibly downtown Raleigh, possibly Chatham Park, possibly, so everybody's trying to scramble to figure out if we can make that work. The biggest thing to me was we did a long story about could we really get Amazon and broke down the numbers and everything. And there's some positives there. The North Carolina tax structure, for example, which has gone down to 3.0% and is going to 2.5, certainly is something Amazon looks closely at. The other is the number of tech jobs in this community. But the other thing that was startling to me is there's 60,000 tech jobs in the Triangle, 60,000, which is a high percentage. But you compare that to Washington, which has 250,000 tech jobs, 250,000. And when you're looking at a company the size of Amazon, things like that matter.